Hello everybody, welcome to another Versus Video Deck Tech. CBM here, joined once again by
BBD.
And we are battling with some new sweet Magic Origins cards for Standard. And we're resurrecting a dead archetype here, so let's jump right in and see what we've got. So as we can see here, this is just basically a blue devotion deck. And this list is actually straight from Mark Nestico's article on the select site on StarCityGames.com earlier this week.
I thought you were going to say it was straight out of Compton.
I mean, it's also straight out of Compton.
All right.
So make sure you check that out if you're interested in seeing, the genesis for the deck and what he had to say. But this is a deck that has been on everybody's mind for quite some time, just because of how, I don't want to say dominant it was, but it was very prevalent in the Return to Ravnica standard format. So when Shorecrasher Elemental was printed, everybody thought this deck's going to be good again, and then it wasn't. And now we have Harbinger of the Tides is the newest flavor that's breathing life back into the deck. And I think it actually has a chance to be good. Harbinger is very, very, very good.
Yeah, the card is, I've had a chance to play with it. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's blue for a 2/2. You can, that kind of rhymes. I don't think it's possible to say blue for a 2/2 and not smile at the end of it.
I just think of like somebody in a 2/2.
Exactly.
Prancing around.
You can pay 2 extra colorless mana to be able to cast it at instant speed. And when it enters the battlefield, you can bounce a tapped creature your opponent controls.
Yep.
So it's not quite as proactive as something like Mana War would have been, where you can just bounce any creature willy-nilly. However, it's going to build devotion for us and give us a pretty big tempo boost if we can use it to bounce something, that happens to cost 3 or more mana. So like a face-down creature, we even get to see what it is at that point. Death Misraptor, things like that. It's going to be pretty sweet. The other new card that we have is Fairy Miscreant. So I don't think it's absurdly powerful, but it's definitely going to be a bit better than something like Hypnotic Siren was in the last version.
Yeah, I agree.
So at worst, it's going to be Flying Men that gives us a blue pip for our devotion, but on those draws where we happen to draw multiple of them, they are going to replace themselves and let us draw some cards, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, I mean, this slot is always just kind of like almost a throwaway creature. That's just there to provide devotion and like maybe plink away at a couple points of damage, but it's not really a credible threat. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it has the opportunity to sometimes replace itself means that it's actually a lot better than the normal Gadul Lurker or Hypnotic Siren or whatever pretty mediocre card this otherwise is.
And then we have Mizia Meddler is the last new card, which is just like a one-shot Spellskite. It's a flash creature, 3 mana for a 1/4. So I've been feeling this card is just going to rear its ugly head in some random situations and just end up being very good. So there's going to be times where we'll use it to, eat a downfall and save an attacking Dragonlord Ojutai. There'll be times where it'll just eat a Bile Blight and save some of our creatures and then not even die itself because it's a 1/4. It also can, eat something like Lightning Strike or Draconic Roar against opponents that have those cards, which definitely gives it a lot of potential when you have it paired alongside cards like Ojutai and Master of Waves that are just like lightning rods.
What would be sweet is if it also untapped a creature you control when it came into play.
That'd be pretty good.
Your opponent's plays a Splinter Twin and you're just like flashing a Mizia Meddler and then combo them off.
Just steal
steal their twin. Yeah.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Now the deck is not just straight mono blue. We are splashing white, primarily for Dragonlord Ojutai, as it's just a big resilient threat that can just take games overall by itself with the card advantage. Normally you're going to be using it to find counter spells. Not so much in this deck, but if we get to connect with it a couple times, just drawing threats like Shorecrasher Elemental or Master of Waves should be enough once we get Dragonlord Ojutai online. We also have Ojutai's Command, which I think is very, very good in this deck. Previous incarnations of Blue Devotion have splashed green for Collected Company. Here we use Ojutai's Command instead as a way to gain card advantage and just kind of bury our opponent. Anytime that we get to counter a creature, put a Harbinger of the Tides back into play and bounce another creature, I don't think there's a lot our opponent's going to be able to do to come back from turns like that.
No, even just like draw a card, put Harbinger into play, bounce your guy, or counter your spell. Just like there's so many different like scenarios where Ojutai's Command is really good. It's actually really hard to play around even when you know your opponent has it. So I think that I actually do really like that aspect of this deck, being able to just sit back on a command and your opponent's kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Exactly. And there even will be times where we'll just, draw a card, put a Fairy Miscreant into play to draw a card.
Yeah.
Like, that seems pretty sweet, too. We do have a Hall of Triumph to help make our creatures a little more robust in combat. And then bringing back the old school Bident of Thassa, since we have 6 1-mana 1/1 flyers and Harbinger of the Tides to play a little bit of a tempo game. I imagine that card's going to let us draw quite a few cards.
Yeah.
Land base, pretty straightforward. I hate this basic plains. I'm going to go on the record and state that now. I'll probably lose a game because the basic plains is in the deck. But outside of that, it just looks like a normal mana base. I am interested to see that this deck decided to only go with 3 Thassa. I know that I talked about the blue-green devotion deck after I played it. I played it in a video that we did, as well as I played it in like an F&M here, and then talked about it a bit after that. I wasn't happy with Thassa. I felt like it was a little difficult to get her turned on in games where you drew a second one. You were really unhappy. So I kind of only wanted 3, which I'm glad to see was adopted here. But now that we have Harbinger of the Tides, I think that might be a little different, and we're going to be a little more, it'll be a little easier to turn Thassa on.
Yeah, I definitely think it's easier, but it's still not, Night Veil Spectre easy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still not like Frostburn Weird, Tidebinder, Night Veil. I mean, we do have like Harbinger and Shore Crasher, which help fill up those roles somewhat, but without like that 1/4 that provide 2 symbols.
That guy just never died.
Yeah, he never died. He was always sitting around.
I mean, I Mizium Mortared a lot of Frostburn Weirds, which isn't the best thing to do with your Mizium Mortar, but you got to do it. So that's the main deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard and see what kind of options we have. All right, we are back with the sideboard for the blue splash white devotion deck. As we can see here, we just have a bunch of 5-mana cards to go along with the other 5-mana cards that are in our main deck, as BBD pointed out as we were looking at it. Prognostic Sphinx seems like a good way to survive Languish, but I think that I'd rather just have more counterspells.
Yeah, I think so too.
To be honest.
Like, you already have Ojutai and Icefall. Like, you can't really play like more than... That's already pushing it in terms of 5-mana spells. Yeah.
Again, we do have another Icefall Regent. I mean, Icefall is just really good against something like Abzan Aggro, so I can understand wanting to have more of those.
Yeah, definitely.
But Prognostic Sphinx just seems a little weird. We do have 2 more Mizium Meddlers as ways to kind of meddle with our red opponents. Save important creatures from burn spells. Just flashing it as a 1/4 and blocking every single creature they have seems pretty good too.
Yeah.
We have another Hypnotic Siren. I imagine that we would want this against matchups where we see that we're going to be getting to 7 mana, not interacting very often. Plus, it's also pretty good in matchups where Bident's good. Just being able to draw cards. We do have some more counterspells: 2 Dissolve, 2 Negate, 3 Disdainful Stroke, just kind of a healthy mix. What's interesting is since we have 5 dragons in the main and a 6th dragon, we could potentially try Silumgar Scorn, but I like the guarantee counter off of a Dissolve.
Yeah, I think 5 is definitely probably a little bit low. 6 is pretty close for Scorn. So.
And then we have a Disperse, just as a way to bounce whatever we need to bounce. It did get reprinted yet again, so...
I think another card that could be pretty interesting for this deck is the 4-mana Mana War. I mean, it's pretty expensive, but along with Harbinger of the Tides, this could be like a pretty effective way to just kind of tempo your opponent out of the game. Yeah,
I was actually thinking about the 4-mana Mana War. Just might even be able to see some play even at 4 mana.
Yeah.
You could put a... Oh, what's the 2-mana enchant? The blue enchantment? It copies itself when it attacks?
Oh, mirror image? Or...
Yeah, something like that.
Something mirror.
Put that on your Mana War and just attack and just keep bouncing their guys.
That'd be gas.
All right, build it. Yeah. That's the sideboard. Make sure you check out BBD's sideboard for his mono black mid range deck.
And also the main deck too.
Yeah, and the main deck for his deck. The deck tech is what I meant to say. And stick around for the game so we can see, who wins in the battle of old. Mono black versus mono blue.
It's always close.
It was. Mono blue won the Pro Tour.
Till